Meta is officially down 21.21% after earnings from the all-time high, and that is something very huge to pay attention to because your stock could be next. So we want to look through some technical analysis for the SPY Qs, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, Nvidia, AMD, and Meta going on today. And we're going to touch on Meta first, but just be very cautious in this area because the alien himself, Mark Zuckerberg, sold a bunch of his stock throughout this big move right in here, and we were paying attention to that on this channel. So let's get into some technical analysis. On the daily scale, we're going to go with the daily scale just to start off, and then we're going to go into those shorter time frames for Meta here. And this right here was showing you a divergence, pretty steep divergence, right? We had a pretty steep divergence here, which means we can get close to going into a negative trend on the daily scale, and you're going to be in that as of tomorrow. So as of tomorrow, we're going to be creating some kind of negative trend. It doesn't mean that we can't see some reactions up or something like that, but this is very, very bad news. I haven't really looked into the earnings. I'm just kind of reacting to this right now. And I wanted to say something about earnings around here as we do go into the shorter time frames. Now, a big thing with the shorter time frames as of right now is you are in a 2-hour negative trend. So first of all, you're in a 2-hour negative trend. So we're going to try to see if we can find any technicals that were telling us about this move and not necessarily at this point. And the reason that I'm going to say that the technicals can't really call some kind of move is because we're basing this off of earnings. And any technical analyst that tells you that they can tell where a stock is going based on the technicals is not being honest with you. The truth about earnings is it is a 50-50 flip, and it is much, much better for you to stay away from it. And really, if you were able to catch a move down here, that is most likely going to be called luck in the industry. Okay, so just pay attention to that. But as we go into the 2-hour, you can see there was no curling over, no reason to take a trade here. 30-minute actually looked like it wanted to curl up by the center line in positive territory. So if anything, the technicals were actually telling you, hey, I'm trying to base out here, maybe go higher. Sure, there's a way down all the time, right? We're flagging. Maybe we wanted to head lower before seeing that base out. But you could say, hey, it's in positive territory. That means this is a positive trend, and therefore the trend is your friend until it's not. And something like earnings can really shake people up, convince people, hey, this thing is going to go higher. Meta's numbers look great. It just got some good news. TikTok's getting banned. The problem is you have earnings around the corner. So as I click into these earnings, I'm just going to click into it here and say, look at this. Green number, green number. They beat, yet the stock goes down. And that is exactly what we were talking about on the live stream this morning. If you want to join us for that live stream every single morning, we were really talking about earnings with Meta and saying, hey, you know, it doesn't really matter what these numbers are. If they just announce something, that's really what I'm paying attention to. Tesla just did it. Netflix just did it. And they're all moving in different ways. And they're all giving the opposite reaction of their numbers at this point. So I would just pay attention to that going forward. Right now, you're going to see the 30-minute be way down in negative territory. Any bounce most likely will be held up with or met with some sellers right above it. Now we want to go into the SPY and the Qs, but first we're going to touch on the SPY, and we were talking about this live, how right up in this area, this is where that weakness can come in. We see that 5-minute divergence, and right around here, we're about to hop off the stream, and we just said, hey, watch out, that 5 minutes getting cooked. We could go retest this level up here. We could retest this broken trend line in some way, and it looks like we wanted to retest that monthly and the weekly expected moves up here. So those expected moves, that's all the options market has expected for the entire week, and we were reaching that on Wednesday morning, right? So we wanted to pay attention to any kind of pullback that could be happening here. As you can see, now we're going to be gapping lower, so we need some daily expected moves for tomorrow to help us out. And for the SPY, those daily expected moves, it's going to be 508.33 to the upside and 502.57 to the downside. And if you want to learn more about these weekly expected moves and you like this trading style where we're really paying attention to divergences, MACD, really paying attention and learning about these indicators, get that course that's down in the description. It's very, very good. And it also is only for $149 for the next 11 days. So go snag that. But as we get into some more technical analysis here, we're seeing this drop off. So we got to talk about these moves here, right? The options market has priced in a move of this amount for the entire day tomorrow. And you notice we may just gap outside of that. So we want to pay attention early on in the day if we're able to build back up. But remember, as we do gap out of a daily expected move or a weekly expected move, we can now use that as resistance. So we're going to be paying attention to the shorter time frames tomorrow when we are live, seeing if this is able to break down. Maybe we get a retest on a 5-minute and then that keeps going. Now, what were we leaning towards in this area? Well, the 30-minute dropping down, creating some kind of divergence up here would be very, very nice, right? But I think we have to look at a bigger time frame at this point. The 2-hour is going to be very, very telling here. Now, I'm not saying the 2-hour is telling to take a position to the downside. I'm saying the 2-hour is very good to pay attention to for the actual sturdy bounce. Right now, this could be some kind of dead cat bounce, right? This is a V shape for almost no reason, maybe some earnings or something like that. But if we actually did curl down on this MACD and create this divergence, that actually would be a good sign. So I think the bearish signal here would be if this 2 hour crosses over, we're most likely going to test this low or make a new one, right? We're in negative territory, right? You're going to learn about this in the course. We're in negative territory, so negative trend on the 2 hour. A downward move would make a lot of sense here, as long as we're able to curl over on that MACD. And then in the future, we can pay attention to this. This is very good to do as a trader. Think of the scenarios that could happen ahead. The two scenarios, since we're dropping from here, really are we going to see this do this and create some kind of divergence down here for a sturdier base? Remember, that's what I was really leaning towards live. Or are we going to see this 30-minute be able to turn back up? If this 30-minute is able to turn back up, where would it be? Well, even with this big drop off, you're going to be towards that center line. So that means any curl up can be some kind of positivity coming. And what were we talking about in this area live? Well, some kind of head and shoulders on the way up. So we do have structure to hold up from here, but I wanted you to be open to the other scenario of the 2 hour rolling over and us seeing a better bottom in the future down here, possibly with a double bottom, but possibly heading to lower levels. So it's always good to have in your mind a way up, a way down, a way that your trade could go against you and when you are going to get out of that trade based on that move. Right now, Meta and other things starting to suffer here, so we're seeing a downward move. If we're short here, what could really mess us up? If this wanted to curl back up into positive territory. So I'd be paying attention to that tomorrow. Q's, similar story, right? We're coming up into a very important point. This point up here is very important, but we're outside of the weekly at this point. So the really the probabilities are leaning towards us landing below this line by the end of the week. So as we are seeing that downward pressure, we actually could head lower. What I would like to see from the Q's, if we're going to base out early, it's very similar to the SPY. Just look if that is able to turn back up, get back into this range. We could see another positive move. But we have news cycle after news cycle, right? We get more earnings after hours tomorrow. So we really have to be on our toes and be willing to be open to the other scenario. The other scenario would be this 2 hour. Look how it's negative still. Even though the Q is seeing a strong move, the 30 minutes in positive territory, the 2 hour could roll over here. And what could happen? Well, we could get down into this gray zone. That gray zone starts at about 412.89. Okay, so we could see that drop down to this level, maybe even cut through this low just a little bit and then see some sort of divergence down here. So I just want you to be open to both scenarios at this point and be able to react when you see one of those scenarios playing out. As of right now, we're losing this trend. Now, see if we're able to hold up at this one right here. If we actually are able to drop through that, we might get a slight retest and then end up lower by the end of the week, which would make total sense because where's our range? Well, our range is all in here. So it would make total sense for us to land anywhere in this range by Friday close. One thing that's been trickling up has been Apple, but you can see a very similar thing to the Qs in the SPY. It looks like it could see some weakness up in this area. So we wanted to point out if there is any weakness, maybe look at a 15-minute, and we don't necessarily see divergences on the MACD, but we have a bunch of little ones here on the RSI on the 15-minute. So that's something I really wanted to pay attention to. It just looks like Apple might need to digest a little bit in this area. If it was going to complete some kind of cup and handle, I believe this is actually where you'd want to do it. You really would want us to come up to this level, complete where that full breakdown happened, and then see that kind of base out and then head up in the future. So I'll just be paying attention to probably a 30-minute. I'll probably be paying attention to a 30-minute here as well. Seeing that curl down, get close to that center line and curl up if that's going to be the next positive move. If this is going to keep going and get past this center line, go into negative territory, then we'd be most likely looking at a 2-hour chart and able to find some divergence in the future for a more sturdy bounce. Okay, more sturdy bounce down here would make more sense, right? This base right here is kind of just a V shape, no real structure on the way up yet. So I'm open to structure being formed, but I'm also open to this testing this low again and then us getting a sturdier base for Apple. Meta, Tesla, Apple, all these things is we give you that weekly range. Okay, this is the weekly range for Tesla. We gave that out because of the crazy earnings, and this is why we stay here, right? We don't mess around with earnings. Sorry about that. We don't mess around with earnings because what happens to Tesla? Similar to Meta, but the opposite. Okay, so two negative readings here. We have minus and minus, both big percentages here, and stock market go up, right? So the Tesla able to get a higher price. So that's why we're giving you the weekly range, just telling some people, hey, if you were bullish on this, if you got lucky, honestly, because this easily could have went down. It's in a negative trend. So if anything, if you were following the trend, you'd say this would be negative. But we announced, hey, some good AI news and some good, possibly cheaper EV news. So boom, stock market makes it go up. All right, cool. Now it's at a point where we could see some resistance come in, and this would be a great area to take profit. But if you want these weekly ranges for the individual stocks, the monthly ranges and daily ranges on Friday, go look at Patreon down in the description. And then if you're going to get these ranges, it's very good to take the course. It's 149 for the next 11 days. It's very, very good at telling you what to do with these ranges and how you can form a strategy around them. What could be going on with Tesla right now is, well, we need to see if the next move higher is going to come, right? This could easily be flushed. At this point, you're filling a gap. You're filling multiple gaps, I think, at this point. And what do we want to see if we want to catch the next move higher? Well, you're going to want to see this come down into this area again. We said this zone was going to be very important. It's a big zone, but it is a good zone to pay attention to. What if we pull back down into an area like this? What if we get a full retest down here, back down into the bottom, since we are within this wedging structure again? What if that happens? Well, I have to be open to that happening, but I can just watch this MACD. If this is going to curl down towards the center line and curl back up, well, that's probably the next positive move. So anywhere this wants to base out and curl back up, this would be where the next move most likely happens. And I have to wait for that structure to prove itself. If we're going to see further downside, well, you're just going to see this drop, maybe consolidate a little bit and then pop again. So if you are playing this next upward move, just pay attention if that upward move is lackluster and then we curl down into negative territory. Once that does happen, you'll be in a negative trend and Tesla most likely will continue to the downside. As of right now, staying up high, so we don't necessarily need to talk about downside too much. We just want to be open to where's the next move going to come. It's when this MACD gets down towards that center line and crosses up into positive territory, something we go over in the course very, very extensively. Now, Amazon was one of the first ones to kind of signal, hey, I'm going to head to lower prices. And what's happening? Well, we started to break through the trend. We started to cross over. Now we're in negative territory. So that means we have a very good potential, especially with this flagging here, to go test this low or go make a new one. So I will be paying attention to a little 30-minute divergence for Amazon. And I just wanted to peek at the 2-hour. What could happen with this 2-hour? Well, what if we briefly roll over on the 2-hour? That would be a great signal that we actually go over in the course. It's not necessarily the golden setup that we go over, but it is a signal to pay attention to. If we do something like this, that would be a very good sign for a sturdier base. So we'll have to see how this plays out. We're going to be reacting to all this stuff live in the morning. So make sure to subscribe, like the video, and tune in tomorrow morning as we are live every single morning to go over stocks with you guys. And you can ask questions. You can tell me a stock to look at, anything you guys want to do in there. I just appreciate you guys showing up, liking, and talking about stocks with me throughout the day. You're going to notice that a lot of these stocks look kind of similar, right? We're seeing this break through the trend. Okay, we start to head to lower levels. Exactly what we were saying. This crosses over in the MACD. It looked like at this area it needed to digest. And if you watched yesterday's video, first of all, thank you for watching. But second of all, we were talking about another move higher up into the top of this little zone we have, and then it starts to break down. And that's exactly what ended up happening. It's nice when you're right, okay? It's nice when you're right, but how far down is this going to go? Right now, we're filling that gap. This is potentially where we could see that second move higher. The only problem is our weekly expected move is sitting somewhere up here. So we're going to tell you that your weekly expected move is up here. That's why this signal was so good to call, was because this really needed to pull back because the options market didn't even expect that big of a move. So as of right now, what you're looking for to the bull side, if that curls up, well, where are we? Positive territory. You could see a big move. And if you get outside of that weekly zone, we could see a big move. Right? When you get outside of those zones, yeah, there's a 68% chance you land back in it. But when you get outside of it with some structure, good chance that you're going to see one of those 32% chances where you see something crazy happen. And in this case, that would be to the upside. If we're going to see further downside, we can look at a 2-hour again. I really like my 2-hour signals. So if I see any divergences start to confirm on the 30-minute down in this area, then I can pay attention to a 2-hour for even more confirmation and then see that next move higher going on into next week. And maybe we break through this trend. So I'm not saying the bullish has to be over. I really think we're actually going to see a little bit sturdier of a bounce. I just think we might need to go to lower prices first to create some better structure down here before we actually see that full bigger bounce that I'm talking about. AMD throughout this entire downward move, you can just look down here at the MACD. It's been negative trend most of the time, little pops into positive, negative trend, little pop into positive, negative trend again. So as of right now, if this is going to continue, we are most likely going to see AMD head down a little bit lower. Now, what could that happen in the future? Well, we'll look for a basing out here, but you guys know I'm not really messing around with AMD too much anymore. It looks like a lot of people are forgetting about this stock. It doesn't mean I can't invest and hold it at a level that I really like and maybe see that thing build up over time. But as of right now, this is looking pretty weak. Now, if that does curl up, positive territory, right? We could be starting that new positive trend. So pay attention to that to the upside because AMD not really testing that upside weekly range just yet. Now we could pay attention to this bar here, see if it's testing that range, and that's something you're going to want to do by putting those on your charts, by joining the Patreon. But if this starts to roll negative, good shot that we're actually going to make a new low here. So pay attention to that going forward. AMD, you have to pay attention to lower pricing just because it's in an area where not a lot could hold up. If anything, I could draw a little zone right in here, right where we did get that bounce, and it's a big zone. Again, a big zone, so I'd be worried about going to test that 200 down towards 136. Therefore, I'm not going to take any upside in this move. I haven't even gotten the daily MACD to cross up, and that thing is deep. So I do believe if we do get some kind of structure to head higher, something very good to be aware about, and something we're going to talk about in the Saturday video when we look at the bigger charts, is we could see some kind of more meaningful bounce over time that then brings us back down, right? We curl up towards that center line and curl right back down, continuing that negative trend for AMD on the daily scale. But as of right now, it looks like, hey, if that 30-minute does curl up, you can get positivity, but AMD's been so negative that you have to pay attention. Maybe a 2-hour divergence is needed by this 200 on the daily scale before we actually see more upside for AMD. A couple other ones would be Microsoft, and this bad boy has its earnings Thursday night. Okay, so Friday going to be very important for this stock. Maybe Microsoft or something like that can save the market. You're flagging out right here. This is a great level to be flagging at this point, right? Completing a cup, maybe all the way up here. Now we're getting that handle. We can head higher. Just look for this to cross up and actually go positive. If it needs to digest a little more, I'd pay attention to that gap and see if it curls back up into positive territory. That's really what I'd pay attention to. Maybe this gap fill at around 400. I would say we gravitate towards 400 if we go down towards that gap. And then that's where we could see a higher low setup. But if you are paying attention to the signals, you're going to want to watch the 2 hours on pretty much every single stock because the 2 hours are still in negative trends for the most part. So we could get a sturdier base. And that's all I'm looking for. I'm looking for a better base to then come down to this area and show me a good signal that the momentum is saying, hey, with some good news, this thing can take off. So that's what I'm really paying attention to. Remember, this market's going to be much harder to trade in going forward, and that's why it's very important, and I keep saying it, but I think it is very, very good for you to look into that course that's down in the description for 149. Now, as we click into Google, this one's looking a lot different, and so I wanted to talk about this because it's a lot different. It is. It's much different than the other ones we're looking at. What's the problem here? Big 2-hour divergence across the way, and you even would have that right now. So if we start to curl down from this area, and Google's going to have earnings coming up very, very soon as well, Thursday after hours. Now, Thursday after hours, we might not want to pay attention to these signals. We might want to just trade something that's already had earnings or doesn't have earnings. So something like Nvidia, which doesn't have earnings for a little bit of time, is what we can pay attention to. But if the signals are going to get this right, they're going to call this as a double top, and we're going to see this ripped away very soon. So be very cautious with Google going forward. This is a big move. There is selling in this move. You see how every single pop has like a little bit of a drop off. That just means insiders are selling in this move. So it's a time to be very, very cautious because we could see just a lower move and maybe we don't see some kind of better basing out and we actually see a stock market crash that just continues for the next month or so. One reason that I could be leaning towards some kind of bounce after we do drop to lower levels is because the dollar's just been dropping off. Now, we have been seeing the stock market bounce a little bit, so this drop off makes sense. But you wouldn't really be expecting it to drop off this heavy if we are going to see the next move higher. Now, this just to be sure that you're aware of it, you do have some flagging in here as of right now, and if that breaks to the upside, it's not going to be good. We were telling you back in this area, hey, we're most likely going to go test 105.65, and that could be where we get back in. So the dollar here saying, hey, I still have the potential to head higher. A good thing to pay attention to on the dollar is just the daily, and as of right now, that is rolling over. So that would tell you that overall, the dollar looks like it might want to pull back. Where could it pull back to? Well, if it sits above that 105.65, we get some bad news. That can be ignored. That can just go up. But as of right now, the signal's telling you, hey, the dollar might need to back off. Maybe it wants to go down towards the 20 and then get that reaction. That would be a solid pullback for the dollar before it wants to head higher. So there are people buying into this overall move, but there are people selling in this move as well, just so you're aware of that. The volatility is something huge. Don't necessarily want to pay attention to the buy signal at the end of the day, but this is a day tomorrow where that volatility can come back in. And live, we were just saying, hey, we told you guys this is most likely going to break this trend, cross over on the MACD, and then we're going to test a level of 15 or even come all the way down to this gap fill at 13. So those are still the two levels I'm paying attention to. Doesn't mean we can't see some kind of little pop in volatility while that happens. So as of right now, crossing down on this MACD is actually a sign that we are maybe going to go to higher price points for the overall stock market, and therefore I would pay attention to a pop, but see if there's anything in this that's saying it's going to curl down. So what could we pay attention to here? 2 hour. I think the 2 hour paying attention to this this throughout the next couple of days will be very good. We could see some kind of pop higher and then just see that fade down. So if this is just going to be some kind of fluke, some kind of bad news from Meta that pulls the market down, and then we see this pop for a moment and drift back down, where are we? Negative territory. So really, I would more be paying attention to the volatility if I saw something like this and I see some upside move to the on the SPY, that's telling me, hey, the divergence is on that at the same time. You can use the technicals on the SPY or on the VIX, but you really want to compare it to the SPY at the same time if you're trying to use it as a trading signal. So I would just pay attention to that. But right here, you know, as we were getting off live, we were like, volatility can come in at any point and be careful around these earnings. So congratulations if you did make money with earnings. It's just me, myself, I know that it is overall a 50-50 bet, and I'm willing to not take that bet because I want some kind of edge, and 50-50 doesn't give me that edge. So the main takeaway here is Meta is once again showing us how the numbers don't really matter, and just them saying something is what people really care about at this point. It looks like everyone is going to release some kind of other news with their data, and that is going to affect the stock. So if you really are trying to trade around these earnings, just be very careful because it is a 50-50 flip. And what are we seeing going forward? Well, the stock market could pull back and maybe we get a more meaningful bounce soon. But as of right now, it looks like the direction's down, and we just want to pay attention to which way we can go with that pullback. Is it going to curl up on that 30-minute, or are we going to see a divergence on the 2-hour, or is it just going to crash down? Those are three things that we really have to pay attention to. And if we just react when we notice what is exactly happening, we can make some money in this market. So thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for liking, subscribing. You guys are fantastic. Grab that course. It's down in the description. If you want to be a part of Patreon to get those weekly ranges, they really help out. Or maybe you just want to join us live every single morning. So I appreciate you guys joining me live. I hope you guys have all the luck in the world trading tomorrow, and I hope you have a great night. Peace.